Captain Marvel is the introduction of the most powerful hero in the MCU to date. It involves a complex web of characters new and old, and it's also a semi-prequel set in the 90s, which means there are a lot of questions left largely unexplored. Be warned, major spoilers ahead. Captain Marvel gives us yet another wrinkle in the history of the Tesseract, the first Infinity Stone to make its way to Earth. We knew that the Tesseract, aka the Space Stone, was found by Hydra in the 1940s, recovered by S.H.I.E.L.D. after Captain America's disappearance, and then stolen by Loki in the 2010s. Now we know that Dr. Wendy Lawson, aka Mar-Vell, was a gifted Kree scientist who used the Tesseract as part of her work on Project Pegasus, using it to power a lightspeed engine before her death sometime around the late 80s. In the 6 years between Mar-Vell's death and the rise of Carol Danvers as a superhero, the Tesseract apparently just sat hidden in her cloaked orbiting lab, which raises a few questions. She was presumably allowed the use of it by S.H.I.E.L.D., so why didn't S.H.I.E.L.D. come looking for it when she died? How could something so important go missing for so long? One of the standout stars of Captain Marvel is Goose, Mar-Vell's quote-unquote cat. By the end of the film, it's revealed that Goose is a flurkin, an alien species that looks like an Earth feline on the outside, but also packs deadly tentacles and the ability to consume objects several times its size. During the film's climactic moments, Goose devours several Kree warriors, intimidates other aliens, and even eats the Tesseract so Fury won't have to touch it. Because we know what happens when the wrong people touch Infinity Stones. Then, in the post-credits scene, we see Goose wark the Infinity Stone up onto Fury's desk and back into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody. Is Goose still hanging around the MCU somewhere? We may never know, but Goose and Fury seem like good pals.
Aren't you the cutest little thing? Aren't you cute? And what's your name, huh?
Fury.
What's cute? I'll be back.
The legendary Nick Fury still has both of his eyes for most of Captain Marvel, and he's still rather green as a lowly level 3 S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. We know that clearance levels within S.H.I.E.L.D. go up to 10, with a couple of even more secretive levels above that, which is where Fury eventually ends up. The film ends around 1995, which gives him a little more than a decade to become director by the time he meets Tony Stark in 2008. We know he gets the director job after forming a relationship with Alexander Pierce, who leaves the position to become Secretary of the World Security Council. What we don't know is exactly how long that took. Fury's rapid rise through the ranks from a wimpy level 3 agent had to be meteoric, right?
That's a yes or no question.
Yes.
Among the film's many familiar faces is Ronan the Accuser, Kree Dispatcher of Justice, and the main villain in Guardians of the Galaxy. There, Ronan is a rogue accuser who becomes a terrorist fanatic after his people sign a peace treaty with Xandar. But 20 years earlier, he's still obedient to the Kree government, working in close collaboration with Yon-Rogg and the rest of the Star Force. We know that Ronan eventually goes rogue, defies his people, and ultimately dies in a struggle over the Power Stone, which is not an uncommon theme for Infinity Stones. At the end of Captain Marvel, though, he says that he'll one day return for Carol, a human weapon. So does he ever return for her? She leaves Earth at the end of the film, but did he and the other accusers ever try to seek her out in space? We don't know right now, but a rivalry between Captain Marvel and a Kree accuser could be interesting. Another familiar face is Korath the Pursuer.
Who?
By the end of his life, he's one of Ronan's top lieutenants, but his eventual defection to follow Ronan is hinted at only briefly, in a scene in which he seems more willing than Yon-Rogg to tell the accuser about Carol's whereabouts. The last time we see Korath in the film, he's battling Carol, only to be defeated along with the rest of the Star Force. Korath's state at the end of Captain Marvel isn't exactly clear, but we know that when he returns in Guardians of the Galaxy, he's working with Ronan and has several enhancements, including equipment grafted into his head. So what happened? Did Ronan rebuild Korath and give him his enhancements? What turns one Kree against another? Probably Thanos. It's always Thanos. One of the most exciting pieces to a potential story in Captain Marvel is the Rambeaus, Carol's best friend Maria and her daughter Monica, who idolizes Auntie Carol when she's a pilot, even more so when it becomes clear that she's a superhero. In Marvel's comics, we know that Monica Rambeau actually held the Captain Marvel title in 1982, long before Carol did. She's since shifted superhero identity several times and is currently known as Spectrum. By any name, she's a vital hero in the Marvel Universe who once led the Avengers and can summon tremendous power of her own. She'd be in her 30s by the time the present-day MCU events happen, so will we see her show up as a hero? Skrulls are an insidious force that will infiltrate any planet using their shape-shifting abilities and ultimately take it over. The Supreme Intelligence tells us this, Yon-Rogg tells us this, and even Carol tells us this, except that it's a big fat lie. The remaining Skrulls in the galaxy are actually refugees, running from the Kree as they look for a new home, something Mar-Vell was hoping to solve with her light-speed engine. With Carol's help, they eventually head off into the stars to find a new planet to settle on, and that's the last we hear of them. Do the Skrulls find a planet to call home? If they do, then they've had more than 2 decades to colonize and rebuild since the events of Captain Marvel. So will they eventually become an expanding power in the galaxy again? The resilience of the Skrulls and their ability to rise up and conquer again and again, even after their defeat, is one of their comic book trademarks. Sometimes they're humanity's enemy, and sometimes they're an ally. So where are the Skrulls now, and whose side are they on? And will they be the ones to come back and help kick some Thanos' butt? When Carol finally remembers how she got her powers and ultimately arrived at the Kree homeworld, everything she knows is flipped upside down. Instead of being an ally, Yon-Rogg and his pals are the ones who shot down Danvers and Mar-Vell's lightspeed ship and killed Mar-Vell. When Carol destroys the engine and absorbs its powers, Yon-Rogg abducts her and hides her memories from her for 6 years. After Carol finds out, she defeats her former mentor and sends him back to Hala, where he'll have to face retribution. So what happens to Yon-Rogg? Is it a light reprimand? Prison? Death by Flurkin? Will we ever see him again? In a universe this complex, anyone left alive is potentially fodder for sequels. Carol Danvers receives her powers when she destroys Mar-Vell's lightspeed engine, granting her superhuman strength, speed, resilience, and the photon blast that become her defining power. But that explosive engine was powered by the Tesseract, aka the Space Stone, an object of tremendous power that's played numerous major roles in the Marvel Universe. The Space Stone can transport its bearer across great distances, as it did with the Red Skull in the first Avengers and Thanos in Infinity War. We also know that it can possibly be triggered from afar, as Loki did in the Avengers. Carol Danvers gets her power from it just as Vision derives some of his abilities from the Mind Stone embedded in his head. Does this mean she can manipulate the Space Stone or use some fraction of its abilities? Is she as intimately connected to it as Vision is to the Mind Stone? Can she teleport? These are all enormous questions, and Avengers Endgame might ultimately provide us with some answers. We all know you have to be careful with those stones, though. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about Marvel movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.